1 second, please. Yeah, Adri, go live.
Hello, everyone, and good afternoon, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us in another thrilling edition of the Product People live stream, where we share nuggets of information to drive your PM skills and career to the next level. Today, joining me is Abdo Wahba. I hope I got that right, to talk about how to improve our presentation skills, basically, and stand out and become the PM presenters and knowledge sharers that we can be. As usual, we have a quick poll in Slido to break the ice, to get to know you better. And for that, you are more than welcome to scan the QR code here or use the code right there, 3226374 in slido.com to participate in this question. So as we go and you fill the questionnaire, well, let me talk about Abdul for like a quick second because he's got like a large resume. So Abdul is the CPO at Offerista Group, and he has been for over 17 years, correct? He's been building, growing, and scaling products, people, teams in startups, scale-ups, SMEs, and big corporates. Abdul has spent over 1,300 hours of coaching and training in presentation skills, product management, and other PM skills as well. He coaches CEOs, chief executives, startup founders, team leads, product managers and leaders, high-level product consultants, and industry experts. He's also casually a humble player, Aikido practitioner, guitar player, and busker. Basically, he does all, and I am incredibly jealous and envious, and I want to be like him when I grow up. Great. So Abdo is here to talk about presentation skills. If you're like me, and I'll give you like a quick introduction. My name is Adriana. People call me Adri. I have been in product management for 2+ years now. My background is a lawyer. I am from that group of people that turned to product management after a glittering career and tiring career in law firm work. I'm happy to be with product people now. What do we do in Product People? If you have yet to hear about us, well, what we do is we are an interim product management, product ops, and transformation acceleration consultant firm. We have in-house staff, lots of very star product and manager consultants that help us achieve the best projects and products in our clients. We also really care about sharing this knowledge, insight, and wisdom with our community. We have a very large community that, because you're here, you're part of, in Europe with over 50,000 members. And this is how we like to give back to our community in Europe. So we want to get to know you. This is the question icebreaker. When it comes to balancing product development and commercial outcomes, how would you describe your current approach? Would you say you're mostly product focused? We prioritize building the best product and, well, commercial results just follow. Would you say you're mostly commercial focused? You focus primarily on revenue, even if it means compromising some product features. Would you say you're balanced? You have a balanced approach where you strive to equally prioritize product quality and commercial goals? Or would you say you're still figuring out because such is life? You're currently working on finding the right balance between product and business outcomes. Which one of these do you feel resonates the most with you? By the way, this is anonymous, unless you want to drop a comment, which you're more welcome than to do. If you have friends, if you have colleagues or peers at work, or just general friends that you think would find this live stream useful, you can let them know that they're still in time. They can join us on live stream on LinkedIn and also on YouTube. And they are also in time if they want to participate on this question. Once again, here is the QR code. Here is the Slido code if you would prefer to just throw that in the website. So we have a couple of answers coming in. I'll just give you 30 seconds. No, I'm kidding. I'll give you a minute. I would say that at least in my case, I would always strive for a balanced approach, but that's because I'm a lawyer and I'm very conservative. I try not to be sometimes because it's good to be a risk taker. But as a lawyer, I really like to be very careful in the steps that I take in general. What is your case? I don't know. Let us know. So as we go, why don't I let you know a little bit more about Abdo? So Abdo also has worked in, tech founder and presentations and coach and trainer, which is awesome. I'm really happy to have you here, Abdo. I'm looking forward to hearing how to improve our presentations skill and leverage all these opportunities that we are probably missing as product managers.
Happy to be here and happy to share.
Okay. So results are coming in, and we have that most people would say that they are commercial focused. Well, half of the people say that they're commercial focused. Half of the people say that they have a balanced approach. Was this something that you were expected, Abdul? I am not sure, but you will let us know for sure. We have a couple more participants that have joined, and the trend is mostly the same. Okay, that's interesting. So without further ado, I will just give it to you, Abdul, to let us know how to become our better PM presentators selves. Thank you so much, and the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining me. I'm here to talk to you about a massive opportunity for product people to stand out. And by product people, I mean anyone who works in product, not necessarily the people who work in the company, product people. Just thought I'd say that given the context. And in the survey that you have received and answered on Slido, you were asked to tell when was the last time you gave a presentation. And from the results that I see now, almost all of you did presentations in at least the last 3 months. Now that you have answered the survey, I would like to go a bit and venture. I want to guess your process. I'm going to guess the process of you preparing this presentation that you did in the last week, month, or 3 months. Namely, while you were preparing, this is what you were thinking. You asked yourself, what do I want to talk about in my presentation? And then came up with some of the following answers. I need an introduction, of course. I need to give background and context, of course. I need examples to validate my point. I think I should use some images, GIFs, and memes. Oh, and this cat meme is super awesome. This Batman meme, I think it makes a very good point. And this elephant meme seems to also be quite funny. Now, raise your hand or write in the chat if this was your process. I'm pretty sure it was. While you raise your hand or react in some way or another, I'm pretty sure it was. In fact, this is how most people do it. This has been my observation in my 17 plus years of product and leadership, and also in my 1,300 hours of delivered training and coaching in presentations, as well as other topics. And it doesn't matter who you are, what your job is, in which country you are, in which culture you grew up. This is usually how people do it. To put a number on it, this seems to happen around 73.68% of all presentations. Now, if you happen to be one of those people, there's nothing wrong per se. this is actually quite fine. However, if the majority of people do it, and we will learn later, this won't really let you stand out. And if you're wondering where I sourced this number, 73.68%, and how accurate it is, the number is completely made up. But I'm pretty sure it feels accurate, doesn't it? If you can imagine that about 70% or 73, 75% of all presentations you attend kind of seem more or less doing the same. Now, why am I saying that you won't stand out? Am I gaslighting you? Am I saying that you are bad? Am I trying to poke holes in your ego or contribute to your imposter syndrome? I mean, you don't need me for that. Everyone has the imposter syndrome. You don't really need me to poke holes in it. But actually, I'm not. You, in fact, did all the right steps. Like the steps you went through are not wrong. They are all correct. The thing is, you just started with step 2, not with step 1. You started with step 2, thinking about the content, not step 1, which is something else. So what is step 1? Do I wash my hands, brush my teeth before the presentation, take a shower, go for a run? While all of those are interesting and possibly recommended depending on your context, that's not really what I'm talking about. But in order to explain and dive into step 1 a little bit more, I want to do a quick exercise with you. Okay, very, very quick. I want you to visualize and imagine the last presentation you attended that was awesome, or any really awesome presentation that you attended. You were in the audience. You don't have to say anything about it. You don't have to share anything about it. Just visualize it and imagine it. Okay? Now that you have it in mind, here's the question. How many takeaways are still stuck with you from this presentation? How many takeaways remained in your heart, mind, and soul after you left the presentation? And you can write a number in the chat wherever you are. And I see here, I see some numbers coming in. In fact, if I were a betting man, I can bet here in this very situation and win every time, because it is always somewhere between 1 and 3 takeaways, usually closer to 1 than 3. And it doesn't matter how long the presentation is. Maybe if it's an hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever, it's not more than 3 takeaways that stay with you after the presentation is done and after you go home. It's if you do a presentation at work, whatever stays with the audience on the next day or the next week or after they go home is not more than 1, 2, or 3 takeaways, and it's closer to 1 than 3. And this is the key to step 1. Because the takeaways, they're never the slides. They're never the content. The takeaways that you keep with you or that manage to impact you to an extent that they stay with you, they're usually a thought or an idea or a conclusion. Yeah? And this is what I like to call the message. Usually, your takeaway is a message. Therefore, step 1, before you put together the slides, before you think about the introduction or the memes or the comics or the songs or whatever, you have to ask yourself, what's my message? What's your message? This is the absolute step 1. What's your message? It's really that straightforward. Because if you think about it, anyone who does a presentation for an impact on an audience does it for one of 3 reasons. We do presentations for one of 3 reasons, not a 4th reason, only one of 3. And the 3 are, we want to make the audience think differently after they leave the presentation. We want the audience to feel differently about something, or we want the audience to act or behave differently. And the kicker and the key word is we want this to happen after they leave the presentation. Yeah, we want this to happen after they leave the presentation. Now, how do you phrase it? How do you phrase this message? It has to be really simple and straightforward. Essentially, asking yourself, what do I want the audience to think, feel, or do differently after they leave my presentation? And I always recommend and push people to phrase it as one sentence that starts with, I want the audience to. This is the end in mind. This is the desired outcome. I want the audience to. And here are a few examples. I want my audience to think or believe we are on time in replatforming our web portal. This is an example that maybe could be a message of one of your roadmap updates or one of your OKR updates or some progress update on a project. Or I want my audience to feel ownership of the user retention problem with product. You're talking to marketing and or customer success or account management, and you want them to also own the retention problem and not throw it onto product and be done with their lives. You want their buy-in. You want them to feel responsible for it, just as you as a product person or product manager feel responsible for it. Or you want my audience, a stakeholder, a stubborn stakeholder who's throwing roadblocks in your way. You want them to actually allow their teams to work with product on the upcoming user research. This is a very common action. If you want people to join forces with you to change their behavior, this is an example of your message. Now you might ask, is it really that simple? Isn't phrasing the message so minimalistically a bit too trivial to make a big difference? Is it that easy to transform the way I do presentations by just thinking about the message and phrasing it? And you'd be correct. It is simple. The problem is not that it's simple or complex. The problem is that 95% of whoever I work with, there is no real message. September, I did roughly 25 sessions of coaching, 25 out of 25. This was my top feedback to them. I could argue that if I coach someone for the first time and they do their presentation, I can switch off my screen, switch off my camera, switch off my audio, close my eyes, time them, and when they're done, I can switch everything on again and go in and say, you need to work on your message, and I'd be right. And it almost happened to me like that. In fact, I have been coaching 5 speakers at the Productized conference that was in Lisbon last week. And this was exactly my experience. And those are, mind you, those are not juniors, those are not entry-level product managers, those are very, very senior product people, product leaders, ex-CPOs or CPOs, heads of product, principals, and so on. Super senior people. But then, this was always my first point. What is your message? And because I saw the before and after, this piece of advice had them really change their presentation drastically. And whenever I ask someone, okay, what's your message? I usually get 2 or 3 minutes of the following. Something that starts along the lines of, I think my message is, or what I'm trying to talk about is, or I guess what I'm trying to say is, and then 2 or 3 minutes of essentially kind of repeating the content that they were sharing, ironically, sometimes even phrasing it better than in the presentation. The thing is, if you are not crystal clear on your message, how can your audience be? How can you expect your audience to be clear on what you're trying to say? You can go into a meeting for 30 or 50 or 60 minutes with one person, where you exchange, where you talk about something, where you ask each other questions, where you clarify things for each other, and then go away, and there is still a chance for misunderstanding. And I'm pretty sure everybody in this call had this experience once or more than once in their life. Now imagine when you're doing a presentation for a larger number of people, not only one, maybe 10, maybe 20, maybe 500, maybe 1,000, maybe whatever. And you are the one speaking. And there's not a lot of room for this kind of interaction that like there is in a one-on-one meeting. So imagine the exponential growth of the probability of a misunderstanding. Therefore, if you're doing a presentation, you have to be much clearer on your message. You have to be very minimalistic on it and simplify it as much as possible. In fact, I would argue that what's your message really changes everything. And instead of arguing this, I'm going to tell you a little story. This story happened to me. I want you to meet Bill. Bill is the CEO of a company that I worked for, and he was my boss. And he delivered an all-hands presentation talking about company strategy and what next and so on and so forth. Then in my next one-on-one with him, he said, okay, hey, Abdo, by the way, what do you think of the all-hands presentation? So I took a moment and then I told him, okay, Bill, do you want the truth or the truth's cousin? Which is an Egyptian saying that is quite self-explanatory. He said, no, I really want the truth. I told him, okay, the truth, in my opinion, is that your presentation was shit. And he was like, what? Why? And then I started telling him why I thought it was shit and so on. And he said, okay, smart ass. The next time I'm doing it on all hands, you're going to prepare it with me. I said, okay, no problem, bring it. So the next time came, and we agreed that he's going to put together a presentation and come to me and the other CEO, obviously, because it's a German company, there are two CEOs, and do the presentation, and then we take it from there. So he came in, he did the presentation, he talked about market opportunity, strategy, thank you, this and that, graph, meme, blah, blah, blah. And then he finished and asked me, okay, Abdo, what do you think? I told him, Bill, what do you think you did well and what should be improved? So he started saying, yeah, I think this market opportunity thing is really good and I think it's going to be awesome. And the strategy, maybe we can change it like this and so on. And he started talking. And then Tom, the other CEO, jumped in and said, yeah, this graph, it worked well when we were talking to our shareholders and investors. We should also include it here and so on and so forth. And they kept riffing, with each other for a few minutes. And then, my blood was boiling slowly. And I was like, okay, you're done. Now I need you to stop. I need you to shut up and listen to me now. And so I took the mic, like figuratively, and I started talking to them about exactly what I said, about what's your message, why this is important, how it changes things, and so on and so forth. And then when I finished, I looked on their faces, and the expression on their faces was awesome. It was like a mix of shock and amazement and learning and realization and kind of, it was saying, holy shit, we've been doing this so wrong for the past, I don't know how many years, and we were about to screw it up again right now. Then I asked Bill, okay, what are you thinking? He said, okay, Abdo, let me get this straight. So if I'm going to focus my message, this means I will have to cut a lot of my precious content. I have to cut the graph, I have to cut the meme, I have to cut all of this, and I love it, but I have to cut it if I want to focus. And I was like, oh my God, yes, finally someone gets it. Yes, that's awesome. And then he said, okay, another question. Like, holy shit, we are now pitching the audience our message. We're trying to convince them, we're trying to make a case now to them. And this was the moment when I finally realized that there's a God in the universe. And being a Muslim, I was about to say Allahu Akbar, which is something that's quite harmless in my culture. But knowing that this has negative connotations and would bring more fear to their hearts than celebration, I decided to say, yes, absolutely. Oh my God, there is good in the universe finally. And that really changed everything. It really changed everything in this presentation. When we did the all hands presentation based on this method, where we thought, what's your message? And then we built on it, we had so much better feedback, unsolicited positive feedback from the team coming to us saying, hey, this is the best all hands ever that you did. Please, every time do it like that. Because we shifted the mindset from just sharing knowledge, sharing information between brackets, to making a case. We are trying to convince the audience of a certain message. Now you might think, Abdo, yes, of course I think of my message. I'm not an idiot. Of course, when I go into a presentation, there's a reason for me to do it. I have a purpose, I have an objective, and I have it in my mind. And to that, I'd say, yes, you're not an idiot. Of course, everybody has a purpose of their presentation and they have an objective and it's relatively clear. But that's not really enough. You really have to write it down. Now, am I just being pedantic? Well, generally I am pedantic, but in this very specific moment, no, not really. This is not me being pedantic. This is being very pragmatic. And I'll tell you why. Because when you write down your message in one sentence, there is wisdom in writing things down. You are tapping into this wisdom of writing things down. Writing things down helps clarify your thoughts. It helps you see your message written down and become something concrete. It becomes something in the universe that you can interact with. When you write it down, you don't only have it in your head, but you have it in front of you. And you can realize, oh, no, that's not really what I'm trying to say. Or you can realize, yeah, this is way too complex than I thought. And it helps you clarify this message. Especially, it helps you clarify what the audience should take away after your presentation. There's another benefit and bonus to that. As product people, we care a lot about product prioritization. And half of our work is prioritizing decisions, prioritizing backlogs, prioritizing resources, and so on. And if you have your message written down, it becomes the basis of prioritization for all of the content in your presentation. You can always ask yourself a question. Does this graph or this meme or this piece of information or this list of actions, does it help me deliver the message or not? And if the answer is an emphatic, unequivocal, super clear yes, it stays in the presentation. But any other answer, you have to cut it. If you are not really sure or you think maybe it does, you have to cut it. Because content that is in your presentation that does not help deliver your message is not neutral. It does not have a neutral effect on the audience. In fact, it is harmful. It doesn't matter how insightful it is. It doesn't matter how entertaining it is. It doesn't matter how impactful it is as a piece of content on its own. If it doesn't help you deliver your message, it has to go. In fact, this happens to me all the time. I went through this process when I was preparing this presentation, and I cut a bunch of stuff, even though I really liked it. I had a story with a former chief sales officer that, in the beginning, when I was putting it, I felt, okay, this helps deliver the message. But then after I finished, I looked at it and I felt, no, it's not. And I cut it. I had a story of my friend Alan, who was preparing a presentation, and I coached him. But then I realized after going through the content again, it doesn't help me deliver the message, and cut it. I had other numbers and graphs and data sources, and I cut them. Why? Because when I asked myself, does this content help me deliver my message? I didn't get an immediate yes, of course. And therefore it was cut. And you, my beloved audience, will never hear about it from me ever again. So essentially, you always have to start with step one, which is, what's your message? And then you write it down in one sentence that is, I want the audience to. Now, why is this really important? Why am I stressing this? Not only does it have an impact on your audience, it has even a bigger impact on you. It's bigger than you think. According to the survey we ran earlier, almost all of us, or a vast majority of us, did presentations in the past between week and 3 months. And usually product managers' presentations, they are high stakes and they are all about making a case. Presentations is a primary tool for high stakes stakeholder management. Usually when you have a presentation to top management, to the senior leadership team, to whoever, there is a lot on the line. And because I'm a product manager at heart and the product leader in practice, let me show you a quick business case, a quick numbers, just a few assumptions and numbers. I did a poll a while ago and found that roughly 70% of people do somewhere between 1 and 6 presentations per month. This adds up to 12 to 72 presentations per year. Now, assuming that you have a success rate of 20%, and by practicing this, what's your message, write it down, you're able to increase it to 50%. And let's define the success criteria here. A presentation is successful if you do not have to spend time after you finish your presentation to convince your audience of the message. You deliver it, and then they are in. They buy into what you're trying to say. And anything that comes afterwards, any meetings, any work, is not about you fighting to convince them again and again, but it's about taking your issue forward. Yeah. And assuming a successful presentation saves you 2 to 4 hours of follow-up and hassle just to convince them. If we put those numbers together, we end up saving roughly, out of thin air, 2 to 18 work days per year, which is almost 1 full hassle-free month of work. Yeah. Just by rethinking the way you do presentations. And it's really quite easy. It just needs a bit of discipline and practice. And there's an additional bonus because there is a huge overlooked opportunity here as well. And that is everybody, almost everyone, takes the easy way out. Almost everyone starts thinking about the content before the message. Almost everyone starts with putting together slides, and they do not write their message in one sentence. I mean, it's not the top advice I give in 95% of my coaching for no reason. In fact, I have a set of things that I call the usual. You know, I know for a fact that if I coach something new, there is almost 100%, okay, 99% chance that I'm going to go through the usual. And the message is number one. This is the number one thing in the usual box of coaching. And this is the reason why 73.68% of presentations are boring and are not engaging. And you get distracted on your phone and you switch off your camera and go do something else, or you start chatting, or you start thinking about your emails and so on. Therefore, if you follow this advice, you can stand out. Not only will you have an impact on the audience, not only will you save yourself time out of thin air, but you will be different. You will be very different than anyone else who does presentations. So let's recap. Everyone, or almost everyone, prepares presentations wrong. In order to do it correctly, think about the message before your content. What's your message? And write it down. And there's a massive opportunity, and it's relatively easy to stand out if you decide to put in some effort and have some discipline. And there's some magic to it, you know? There's some magic to thinking about what's your message. It's almost as if, you know, when you have your message down, it's almost as if you have a magnifying glass that you use to collect the rays of the sun and focus them on a very specific point that becomes so strong that it burns paper or leaves or even wood. And I'm pretty sure everyone in this, like, I'm pretty sure everyone in the audience has tried this experience before. And this is what, you know, what's your message, and writing it down, this is its effect on what you're trying to say. Instead of saying a bunch of things that are randomly dispersed at the audience and hoping that something sticks, if you think like this and you prepare like this, you're using the magnifying glass to really focus what you're trying to deliver and make sure that the audience leaves having your intended message sticking to their minds, hearts, and souls. So don't take the easy way out. Yeah. Don't be like Bill and Tom and go through the usual process of thinking about slides. Yeah. Don't think about slides before your message. Please write it down. Yeah. Don't be meh. Don't just be a meh presentation, you know? Do you like your audience to leave and say, yeah, it was nice. There was some things here and there that were interesting. Or, oh my God, I have to go and help the product people now because otherwise I'm completely screwed. This is the effect you want. You want to be magic. You want to have this effect. And this is what you do. If you please write what's your message and write it down, I promise you, it works miracles. Now, I'd be lying if I say that this is the only thing that will make you stand out. There are lots of other things. But in a span of 20 to 30 minutes, I can only put you on the right path. If you want to further explore the path to awesome presentations, I offer you a free presentations coaching session that you can book through this QR code or this URL, or I offer you to sign up to one of my presentation skills courses or workshops that is roughly 6 to 7 sessions in a small group of somewhere between 2 and 6 people. And every session is between 60 and 120 minutes. Also, you can sign up through this QR code. And that would be it. Thank you very much. I appreciate your attention, and I'm looking forward to your questions and challenges and tackles. I mean, Adri said I play handball, which is true, and I love a good tackle. So please, you know, challenge what I said as hard as you can, and I'm happy because it makes me learn and makes me grow myself.
Thank you so much, Abdo. Honestly, I think this is quite possibly one of the most enlightening live streams I have ever had the pleasure of hosting. If you're okay, then I'm just gonna share my screen and we're gonna continue. And we're hearing what the audience has to tell us. So if you can, just allow me to share back the screen.
Okay. Then let me copy the links and share them with you so you can share them with the audience somehow.
Absolutely. I think we can share a link through our comment section through the live stream we use. So by all means.
Right. Okay, then I'll stop sharing.
Thank you.
I added the links in our chat together for you to share with others.
Amazing. I do want to say that I enjoy presenting, but I have never given this any consideration. And it's funny because a very wise man who I like to think of as my mentor in product management once told me that a lot of the work we do is not only managing a product, but actually managing relationships and people and influencing people. And I think this tip you just gave us of how to think of our message before addressing an audience plays a huge part in being successfully influencing people into buying in not only our initiatives, but also ourselves as leaders and PMs. So this is amazing. And thank you so much for sharing it. Okay, so if the audience is just like me and has a lot of questions, please, by all means, here is the QR. Here is, again, the code for Slido. You can use the same QR and the same link on Slido. There is now a section for the Q&A. And while we gather some questions, just let me tell you a little bit more about Product People, because what else? So what we do in Product People is we usually offer interim and fractional product manager services. We can also be product coaches or consultants, and we can also support your business in product discovery. We have a lot of B2B clients that may be familiar to you. A bunch of these are really, really massive European market players. We also have B2B clients, and we have like just a couple of stats here, like shameless plugin. We have helped over 300 cross-functional teams through our services. We have over 40 product leaders and product managers in-house and full-time, so that we can always provide continuous quality service. And we take this very seriously. We have at least 66% of the women in the leadership in Product People. I'm also very happy to say that it's quite a diverse team of people with all sorts of backgrounds related to products somehow, including myself. So please drop us your questions. I think we have already a bunch of those, so I'll read them to you, Abdo, if that's okay. The first one is, what should we do if we are nervous during the presentation? How should we cover our nervousness? Oh, that's real.
Sure. Okay. So one of the things that I do in my coaching and in the workshops is actually address this. The shortest answer is, through observation and through empirical evidence, I can tell you, and this is for real now, not like my made-up number, the audience usually perceives you as a speaker to be less nervous than you actually feel. Yeah, the audience perceives you as less nervous than you actually feel. They perceive you as more confident than you think. I do this as an exercise with all the speakers that I have, and they are always surprised. We do it like on a scale from 1 to 10, and usually there is a difference between what they feel and how they are perceived by the audience. And usually if you're nervous, like a 7, chances are you are perceived as a 4 or a 5. Now, saying this, you know, in a dry theoretical setting maybe won't convince you, but if you join my session, we will do it, and you will realize it. It's more of an aha moment. And it also, like, knowing this helps people calm down. You know, if you go in, by the way, I'm still nervous before presentations. I was a bit nervous in the beginning. Maybe you haven't noticed it, or maybe you have, I don't know, but I was a bit nervous. And in the productized conference, the people I coached, they were very nervous when they went on stage, and that's normal. But when I asked the audience in front of them, or I mean, one of them, we were talking to after the talk, and one of them, you know, was talking to one of the audience, and they came and told her, wow, you were super confident on stage. When I knew for a fact that she was super nervous before, because we talked about it. I talked to her, I was there on site, and we talked. She said, yeah, I'm very, very nervous. And we talked a little bit, and, you know, she calmed down, and then she went in super nervous. But some random person from the audience told her, I love your presentation. You were so confident. You were so radiating. And this is nothing extraordinary. This is really the usual case.
Amazing. That happens, I think, in more than just regard. Usually our mind has a way of perceiving things that it's completely off the real thing. We have one more question here, and that is, how do you know, I love this one, how do you know the presentation was not a success?
How do I know? If after the presentation, I get some feedback of the audience that what they picked up or the thing that they loved from the presentation does not match the message I intended to deliver. Or if I get questions that are more about the audience trying to understand what I said, rather than questions that go beyond the topic. Yeah. Like, for example, today, if I had someone in the audience say, yeah, but how do I really make sure that I deliver the message? Or not, maybe not that, but why do I need to write down the message? Or I didn't really fully understand what is the message. Then I failed. But if the questions go beyond it, like how do I use this in this situation? How I use this in that? Or here's an edge case. Here is a situation I had. Can you help me with it? This means, okay, message is delivered and we're moving forward. And it's very difficult to identify that. You have to have some feedback from the audience.
Thank you so much. What I'm learning also is that it takes some vulnerability, right, to realize that there may be content that is not as relevant for the message, and also to be open to receiving the feedback from your own audience. It takes a little bit of, vulnerability, maybe humility as well, to be a really good presenter in that way. We have one last question, and that is, have you experienced an audience that would ask you totally irrelevant questions after the presentation? Is there any best practice to cope with these kind of situations?
Yes, I've experienced it all the time. The best way to deal with this is you label it as this, okay, this question is not really relevant for the topic. And then you have to choose. Do you want to answer it? Or you can say, let's talk about this offline because it's not really relevant. Or you answer it because you have an answer for it. Or if you don't have an answer, you can say, I don't really have an answer. I need to look this up and get back to you. Let's connect so we can do that. There's no harm or shame in not knowing an answer to an irrelevant question, or a question that isn't in the core of what you're trying to talk about or in the core of your message. If you ask me today about fashion, I would say, it's not really relevant. And honestly speaking, it's not my strength. So I'm not the best person to answer you. Maybe you should ask someone else.
Great. We actually have 2 bonus questions.
Great.
So, how can a product manager handle conflicts with their internal team during a presentation?
How can a product manager handle internal conflict? I need a bit more details on this question. Could the person...
So we don't have more detail, but I can think of an experience I've been through before, which is sometimes you will be presenting something and perhaps what you're presenting wasn't run through someone else, or perhaps it has a concept or something that they did not agree upon. And then you have, like the chat going crazy in private, and you're trying to keep it cool while you're presenting to an audience.
Okay, the person who asked this question, please let us know if Adri's understanding is correct or not.
Yes, please.
Meanwhile, I will answer your question, Adri, and then we see if we're answering the original question or not. So this is a bit of a specific situation. If you're presenting something and the audience isn't expecting it, or you're asking them to do something that they're not expecting to do, that isn't necessarily a presentations problem. It's possibly expectations management or alignment problem with the team. Assuming I understood you correctly. Yeah. If we're talking about you were doing a presentation and someone started arguing or interrupting all the time, or pushing negative things onto the audience or onto the context, then there are ways of handling such situations. And the essence of how to handle this is to give a little bit of room to the person to express themselves, but limit it. And you can always limit it by saying, okay, listen, I think you have a lot to say. Let me finish, and then we can dedicate some time to focus on what you're trying to say. Because some of the things, maybe I can answer them in what I have in my presentation. And if I don't, then let's talk about them in more depth later on, not just in this, squeeze them into this part. Yeah, I hope we addressed your question, Mr. or Mrs. Audience person who asked this. If not, please write again, no problem. But I'd appreciate a bit more elaboration in order
Yes.
not to make it too theoretical.
So we have one more here. And what was the most recent presentation where you failed to deliver your message? Do you remember what the message was, what the audience was, and perhaps why do you think it failed?
I have one, but it's not very recent.
Mm-hmm.
I was working with my product team, and I wanted to introduce a new structure, a new team structure. And I was so focused on it, especially that the entire team was kind of saying, yeah, we need to change the structure. We need to do something where the way we are working now isn't really working, and we need to have a different dynamic and different process and whatnot. And I said, okay, I'm going to work on something and get back to you. And then when I got back to them, I didn't ease them into the topic. And what happened was, like, my message was, I want my audience to opt in the new structure. But my mistake was I haven't really highlighted the problem and the pain in the beginning. Even though it's coming from them, they really almost revolted against it. No, this is shit. The structure won't work. Everything, this will be such a pain. Like, there was massive complaints. And then I cut the topic short. Okay, fine. I finished. Let me think about it, and please share your ideas. And then I started collecting input from them and so on. And then I came back when I did the presentation the second time. I started from the beginning. Okay, this is the problem we're trying to solve, and here is the problem. And this is the problem according to you. And then, ask them, hey, what do you think of this? Have I described the problem correctly? And then I got their opt-in on the problem. And then I said, okay, here are the possible solutions. And here are the solutions that you sent me. And if we combine all of the variables, we will end up in the structure that I told you about. And it changed everything. I did also a bit of, group dynamics and divide and conquer here and there, but that's tangential to the presentation. But this is essentially what I did. And I learned that I will never dump a new structure or a new way of working on a team like a cold shower. Never again.
Thank you for sharing that lesson. Well, sadly, we have reached the end of our time with Abdo. Thank you so very much for joining us today. This was lovely. This was very enlightening. I think people in the audience as well. As you may know, this live stream is being recorded, and we will share the recording. So for all the QRS that Abdo has shared with the workshops and the coaching sessions, those will be accessible through the live stream recording as well. So
Audrey,
thank you.
Can I share them one last time so that people can, after you finish?
Yeah, of course.
All right.
Okay, I